Alright everybody, I just posted up a video on Justin's 71 Chevelle, and today I figured I'd make a video on programming his Smartwire and kind of show you the steps that are involved in doing that. So we open up the Racepak software, and this is just like a standard config that came in the Smartwire. So this is obviously not set up for his car. I have already downloaded it from the car, right? So we plugged into the car and I hit read and it read all the channels. So it pulled everything up. So if you've watched any of my other SmartWire videos, these are all outputs, right? All the way to here. And then these are inputs. So SM1 switches are hardwired inputs that are on the A and B connectors in the SmartWire. And then with this car, we're using one of those little switch buses, which is it's like an input expansion module. So there's 16 of them here. So um, what I like to do before we get into programming outputs, and you'll see why, I like to program the inputs first, right? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click up here at SmartWire 1, and I'm just going to rename this to Justin Arnold so that I know when it saves in my computer. We go File, Save As, and we're going to change it as Justin Arnold. All right. So now I can, if I ever have to reference this back, I know whose this is. If you only do your own SmartWire stuff, then you probably don't have to worry about that. But anyway, so now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this in split screen. So I'm going to put this in the left panel here, and then over here I'm going to pull up my Excel sheet. So if you don't know what I do here, we make Excel sheets for every car. It's just kind of like this is a pinout of the connector. This is a SmartWire connector A. Its pin location. The output, it's a 20 amp output. This is what it does. This is where it goes, yada, yada. Then we have a switch module here. This is just kind of wire colors, where it's going, what it's doing, right? So I'm going to use this as a reference point when we're doing our inputs. So the first thing we need to do is let's look at the SM1 switches, which is our inputs. So if you look, we're on SmartWire connector A over here, right? SmartWire connector A, and then A10, which is A10 right here, and that is reverse from ECU, right? So we're going to just do this. I usually always preface them with ECU reverse, right? So we need to look at it. Is this a ground trigger or a 12 volt? So let's pull open his global file. So we open global file. There he is. Here we go. Pin map. View outputs. Okay, so here we go. Fan. Here we go. Where's reverse? Oh, reverse is actually spare. So there it is, right there. Yeah, spare one. Okay, so there we go. So reverse is a H, which is a 12 volt. So we come back over here, and this is a 12 volt input. Okay, it's voltage trigger input. So let's look at A18. That's a wiper pump switch. So we go right there. See how it says wiper pump switch. Wiper pump in. That's a 12 volt. Let's do A11. Fog light in. It's also 12 volt, and the reason I know it's 12 volt off the top of my head is because we send 12 volt out to all the switches. So A12 is neutral safety. Okay, and we make that a voltage, and then 13, dump from ECU. Whoops, ECU dump. So what's the dump valve? The dump valve is dump to SmartWire to 12 volt. So here we go. We make that a voltage trigger, and then we need to pull up A14, which is spare 3 from ECU. So this is ECU spare 3. So if you don't use Excel, it's all right. You can just write this stuff out if you want to, but to me, I find it to be a little bit easier. So which one? What was the input type for spare 3? It was spare 3 is a ground. So we come over here and we leave it as ground. It's a ground trigger. So now we need to look at connector B. So we've got notice these are all in black, right? These are our inputs. So what that means is these are signals being sent into the SmartWire to tell it to do things, right? So let's go to SmartWire connector B. Let's just run through these real quick. So starter from ECU. So ECU starter. And what is that? ECU starter is a 12 volt. So change that over to voltage. B11 RPM. Oops, ECU RPM. And it's going to be a little, you could write this stuff down, it'd probably be easier. So RPM, that's a 12 volt, spare one is a 12 volt, master enables. So we got a couple other ones that are, I can remember here. So that's 12 volt, and then we open this back up. Master enable is a 12 volt, so we go B12. So master enable from ECU, so it's a little different than the way we normally do it, but I'll explain it. So it's a 12 volt. And the reason you want to do all these first is because when you start setting up your outputs, you're gonna just want to program the on condition right away. So break PSI from ECU. So this one's a little bit confusing. It's not necessarily break pressure from the ECU. We're not sending over an actual pressure value. What we're doing is we're using a 12 volt output that we're going to activate based off of brake pressure, just to turn on the brake lights. So that's a 12 volt. Brake PSI. I did that wrong. ECU brake PSI. There we go. 14 is spare 2. So ECU spare 2. That was a 12 volt. I think. And B18 spare 1 is a 12 volt. Spare 1. So let's just confirm those so we don't burn nothing to the ground. Spare 2 is a ground, spare 1 is a 12 volt. My bad. Let's fix that. It's just Justin's. It's okay. It doesn't matter. If you screw it up, it just won't trigger. So we're going to hit OK. After we make a big change like that where we program all of those inputs, we're going to go File, Save. You only have to save as if you want to relabel it. So then we have this SB1 switches, right? So if we right click on that, these are our 16 switches, and these are all of our inputs for it, right? So all of these inputs are 12 volt, all of them. So it's pretty simple. You just kind of type it all in. Horn in. That's a voltage. You can fast forward through this if you want to. But I'm going to do it anyway. So just deal with me. Marker in. Whoops. So we send 12 volt out to all the factory switch stuff. And then, well, it's not just really factory switches. It's 2013 Camaro switches for a lot of this stuff. Right, turn in. So since we're sending 12 volt out of it, the switch obviously completes the circuit and it passes 12 volt back to the Smartwire. So high beam switch. So the high beam switch is actually on the ground, on the floor. You know, like you kind of stomp on it to turn on high beams, old car stuff. So wiper input. It's a 12 volt. Let's see, line lock. We're using one of the buttons. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but one of the buttons on the steering wheel is actually our line lock. I believe it's like radio favorite up is our line lock button. So that's pretty neat. Then we got a brake switch input. So you're probably asking yourself, why do we have a brake switch and brake pressure from the ECU? Because we're going to do some pretty cool stuff with it. We're going to set up some stuff that I can't really go into yet, but when we do, I'll make a video about it. So then we got an ignition input. So this is our ignition switch, right? So you turn the key onto ignition, and then it'll know, like, hey, now we want to turn all the ignition circuits on, right? So we got door ajar switches. Those were ground because they go through the chassis. Trunk open, that's also a ground. 14 is a dome switch. That is a 12 volt. And then hazard and wiper high. hazard switch is a 12, and then wiper high is a 12. So we got a high and low for wipers. Okay, excuse me. So all that's done. Now what we need to do is program outputs and then on conditions, okay? So if we right click on any of these, let me just bring this back full screen. So all of these are outputs, right? So you got 30 outputs. So if you right click on any of them, it pulls up this. And notice here it says pin number A3, right? So it's easier if you've got this in Excel or if you have a printed out piece of paper in front of you. You right click and we're on A3. So A3 is actually the wiper motor, right? So A3 is wiper motor. The wire color is white with a black stripe. So anyway, the channel mode is enabled. The output number is 1. Notice that that's just what they call it. It's irrelevant for us, right? And what we want to do for this, for the wiper motor, is we're actually just going to send 12 volt to the wiper motor, and we're going to use a switch to turn it actually on and off. But wiper motor isn't going to come on until the ignition, or to the first wiper switch is on, right? So on condition, we're going to click here, and we're going to say, let's add a few things here, right? So we're going to go, here is our SB1 switches, and first thing we're going to do is wiper input. So wiper input is equal to 1, and we're going to add, let's see, SB1. We're going to add ignition input. So ignition input is equal to 1. So we're going to add that. What I did was I right-clicked here, hit ignition input, or add ignition input. Now both of those inputs need to be active in order for the wiper to work, okay? The wiper high switch, we're sending to the Smartwire, but it's actually going to be going directly to the wiper motor as well. We're just going to use it for something else. So anyway, that's going to turn on our wipers, right? So now you understand why we wanted to label these, right? Wiper input and ignition input, because otherwise you're just guessing as to what pin they're on. So it's easier to label your hit OK. It's easier to label your inputs before you start working on your outputs, right? So now look at that. We never labeled it right? So we're on A3. Hold on. So I never changed the name. So we right click, and what I do, make life easier, I go A3 wiper motor. So now when we look at this, it's A3 wiper motor. We know what pin it's on. This is A6, so A6, and that is USB charger. USB charger. It's actually chargers. There's a couple of them in the car. So on condition for this, he wants these on all the time. So what we do here is we click here on this plus box here for Justin Arnold. This is the whole Smartwire, and we say number of fuses blown is less than 1. So if any fuse blows, it's going to shut off his USB chargers, right? So the way this works is as long as the car is on, the USB charger is on. There's a contactor in this car. There's actually 2 contactors in this car. So when he hits the kill switch for the car, the USB chargers will be dead. But if he leaves his phone in the car charging when he runs into the store, it'll still charge with the key out of it, and the car can't drive off. So that's an easy way to have a constant 12 volt, right? Is that number of blown fuses is less than 1, right? Okay. Let's find another good example of a different way to program stuff. So these are all 20 amp outputs. So let's find a good one here. I'll just click at random. A7 is both left turns. Perfect. So this is a good one. On condition. These are the left-hand turn signals, right? So what we want to do is this is front and rear left turn. So we want left turn in, right? So left turn has got to be equal to 1. And then we need SB1, sorry, here we go. We also need a hazard switch, and we also need ignition, right? So we go here and we add ignition. Okay, so if left turn is on and the ignition is on, then the left turn will work. If the hazard switch is on by itself, it'll work. So the reason being is that if you leave the key in the ignition, when you have the turn signal on, the key's got to be in the ignition for just the turn signals to work. But if you're broke down on the side of the road, which we hope we're not in this thing, but if we're broke down on the side of the road and we got to go walk off somewhere, you can leave the hazard switch on with its four ways going, but you can take the key out of it and still, have flashing hazard lights. So that's a kind of cool way to doing things with a smart wire. You can't really do that with a relay. You can't just do that with a standard relay. You can with this. So now what we need to do is we need to change the output function. So it's not a constant on, it's a flash. And we can choose the flash on time and the flash off time. So it's half a second for both. That's all we really need to do with that, right? So I didn't name it. So A7 is A7 left turn. Then we obviously got to do the same thing for the right turn, which, we're kind of goose chase to try to find because they don't label them the way I would. A22 is a dome light. So you get the gist of it, right? I'm going to show you, well, I kind of showed you, multiple function programming here. So hopefully this kind of takes a little bit of the fear away from y'all on how to program this stuff. It really isn't that hard. If you right click on any of them, it'll give you the pin number. You refer over to your sheet, and you now know, what's what and why you want to turn it on and when you want to turn it on. So anyway, hopefully this helps, and let me know what you think, and hopefully we make it to our event with Justin's car. See you.